Huda Khamoush. Her job title is period campaigner. Oh my God, periods. Muslims can't talk about periods. Oh, so taboo. As a Muslim man, I don't even understand what that is. I'm just completely befuddled by the concept of menstruation. I mean, if you're not talking about your period, you're not civilized. I want to react to the BBC's list of 100 inspiring and influential women of the world because it is just so outrageous. The list this year has 50% women from Afghanistan. And basically the entire list is an attack on Islam, an attack on Afghanistan and the people of Afghanistan. They chose Afghanistan specifically because of recent political events, but they could have chosen any Muslim country, found 50 women from that Muslim country, and put that country on blast, putting Muslims on blast, Islam on blast. And this is the basic approach of Western media and Western government agencies. And this is not something new. The 2020 list also was about 25% Muslim women, and there's a very clear pattern. They choose specific women that fit a specific profile of being very liberal, being feminist, being activists, being disruptors, and they put these women on a pedestal, and that's meant to basically social engineer Muslims. And we see this with other groups as well. Black activists have pointed out that their political movement has been disrupted and in fact hijacked by these establishment powers that have installed basically lesbian, feminist, trans, sex workers as the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement. And that has hijacked their movement because of this kind of social psychological engineering that has taken place, putting specific people on a pedestal as leaders. And these are the leaders that they want for Muslims. And the whole idea of reforming Islam, bringing an Islamic reformation, part and parcel of that strategy is female empowerment. During the Trump administration, there was a memo that was leaked that was extremely telling. And in this memo, talking about how we can reform Islam and basically change the Muslim world to bring it more in line with US interests. In this memo, it says 2 practical target groups for this approach of reformation are women and youth, though they are by no means the only potential targets. Focusing on female empowerment as the primary information messaging goal within the Islamic influence world will allow the US to maintain a moral component for American power and its liberation narrative. So they lay it out very clearly in this memo from the Trump administration, the State Department, about how to bring about Islamic change and reformation and bring the Islamic world under the control of Western influence and power. You have to focus on female empowerment, female leadership. And it was not only just Trump who had this kind of strategy within his State Department. Obama as well was very explicit on Muslim women's leadership, both domestically and in the Muslim world. And recently within America, you have the example of Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. They are basically hand chosen to be the leaders and representatives of Muslims in the world. So even in the description of the women that they chose, they say this year 100 women is highlighting those who are hitting reset, women playing their part to reinvent our society, our culture, and our world. Maybe people don't want their cultures reinvented. Maybe people don't want their societies or the world reinvented. The BBC doesn't even ask that question or raise that question. It's just a given. These are women that are going to change the world and reinvent. To reinvent means to abolish what has already existed. Abolish all your cultures, abolish all your traditions, abolish all your religions, because we're going to build something better in its place. Who gave them the right to do that? Who gave them permission to act in this kind of way, to destroy everything that we love and hold dear about our cultures and our religions and our societies? So here's an Afghan poet, Lima Afshid. I wonder what kind of poetry she writes. Award-winning poet and writer whose poetry and articles challenge patriarchal norms in Afghanistan. Sahar Fatrat, Afghanistan. She plays soccer and is a feminist advocate. Rada Akbar, artist, Afghan artist. Misogyny and the oppression of women are at the heart of this Afghan visual artist's work. Crystal Bayat, she's a social activist and human rights advocate. Played prominent role in protests. Sari Kahraman, Iranian-Canadian writer and co-founder and president of the Iranian Queer Organization, bringing LGBT to Iran. Iman Leker from Egypt, a contemporary dancer at the Cairo Opera House and choreographer. Iman had to flee Egypt because of police persecution as an LGBTQ person. So this is a trans. Razia Barakzai. After working for the government at the presidential palace for a number of years in various capacities, Razia found herself without a job once the Taliban took power in Afghanistan. So she lost her job with the occupying forces. That makes her a hero. Dr. Alima, she's a philosopher and campaigner. She was a deputy minister for human rights and civil society in the State Ministry for Peace. So a lot of these women that they selected are the previous Afghan administration that was basically working with the US government and other Western forces, occupying powers. So these are traitors to Afghanistan working with the occupying powers, and they're celebrated by the BBC. Najla Habibiar led projects for US aid and the World Bank, focusing on women's empowerment and climate change in relation to business. So that's not shady, working for the World Bank. So this is funny. Zarlasht Alemzai, a former refugee from Afghanistan herself. Zarlasht is co-founder and chief executive of the Refugee Trauma Initiative, an organization that provides psychological support to refugees. But here's what's interesting. She was one of the inaugural Obama Foundation Fellows in 2018, a group of 20 global leaders in civic innovation sponsored by former US President Barack Obama. So do these people not feel the conflict that you have Obama, who is the one who's creating these refugees? He played a big role in creating thousands, hundreds of thousands of refugees with the kinds of wars that he started in Libya and in Yemen and in many other parts of the Muslim world, with drone striking, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, on and on. All of these wars that are perpetuated by these presidents. How can you not feel guilty to associate with them and claim that you're trying to help refugees? The people who are creating the refugees, the administrations that are creating the refugees, you are being sponsored by them and funded by them. The hypocrisy is ripe. Fahima Mirzai, Afghanistan's first and only female whirling dervish dancer. So if you want to get on the BBC 100, become a whirling dervish as a woman. Shamsia Hassani, she is a female graffiti and street artist. Wow, so you can be doing graffiti and be featured by the BBC. So Nasreen Hosseini, she's a vet that studied at Kabul University. She grew up in Iran as a refugee, but returned to Afghanistan for her studies and later moved to Canada with a scholarship to study animal health. So she's just working in Canada and is Afghan, so that makes her one of the top 100 most influential. Razma, an accomplished musician, plays an instrument that is usually reserved for men. Which instrument is that? Basira Peyram, working for LGBTQ rights in Afghanistan. Now living in Ireland, she continues to campaign for recognition of Afghanistan's LGBTQ plus community and their human rights and freedoms. Rohila. Schoolgirl Rohila has been affected by the exclusion of girls from Afghan secondary schools since the return of the Taliban. Her favorite subjects are science and English, and she longs to be able to join her brothers on the school run each morning. That's it. Doesn't say anything that she's done or if she's protested, or she's just a generic Afghan schoolgirl. Sahar, one of many young women who want to play football in Afghanistan, but they're no longer able to. It's a tragedy. Fatima Soltani, after she started mountain climbing as a hobby in 2019, Fatima made it her mission to encourage an interest among Afghan girls in mountaineering. So important for Muslim women in Afghanistan to climb mountains. Malala, of course, the original shill, the original stooge. Yuma from Turkmenistan. She was forced to leave Russia following the backlash to her participation in a supermarket advert that featured her family in a celebration of gay pride. So inspiring. Huda Khamoush from Iran, and her job title is, let me see, period campaigner. What does period campaigner mean? Let's read. Menstruation is not a taboo was the awareness program that women's rights activist Hoda Khamoush ran in Afghan schools to promote open conversation about periods. Oh, okay, so oh my God, periods. Muslims can't talk about periods. Oh, so taboo. Oh my God. As a Muslim man, I don't even understand what that is. I'm just completely befuddled by the concept of menstruation. I mean, so imagine like your entire mission in life is to promote conversations about menstruation. So important. I mean, she's a shiro for sure. I mean, the idea that Muslims are so incompetent or they're so backwards and you have to have these kinds of activists, liberal activists who teach Muslims basic things like, oh, menstruation is not some kind of evil thing, you stupid Muslims. People on the West have to, like, wow, oh wow, she's really making a change. She's really making a difference in so many Muslim lives. All of these Muslims who just have no clue what menstruation is and they don't talk about it publicly and openly like we do. Yeah, because in the US, everywhere I go, anytime I step out of my house, someone is talking about menstruation. That's how open and free thinking this society is. I go to the grocery store. Oh, how are you, ma'am? Are you on your period, ma'am? Oh, is this the menstruation corner of the department store? We're just openly going to talk about menstruation. And this is so important, in the free, liberal, democratic West. If you're not talking about your period, you're not civilized. So this list is supposed to be about inclusivity. Look how many Muslims we've included. But in actuality, this list is an attack on Muslims. It's an attack on Islam. It's a way to psychologically manipulate Muslims to take such figures as their ideal. People who they explicitly say are trying to completely reset, restructure, reinvent society, culture, religion, and everything. So this is very subversive, and Muslims just need to be smart and recognize what's going on so that we don't fall for these kinds of cheap tricks. And, the whole idea of women's leadership, this is something that Muslims have to be very clear on. Whenever we're talking about empowerment and leadership, go and review the hadith about women's leadership. What did the Prophet ﷺ say about women's leaders? And that's a homework assignment for you, because I want you to go, and it's not just one hadith. Multiple hadith about women's leadership and what the world is like when women are in charge. So go and learn what Islam teaches about this. Maybe some people will even post it in the comments below, but try to recognize what is real prophetic wisdom. What is real prophetic wisdom about this issue? And it's expressed very clearly in the hadith. Right? So that's real prophetic wisdom, not these, compassionate imams that claim that they're teaching prophetic wisdom. Meanwhile, they're sitting side by side with some of these activists, co-paneling with them, having events featuring these same kinds of feminist activists and claiming that these are role models for the Muslim community. That's not prophetic wisdom. Go review the hadith on women's leadership, and then you'll get a real dose, inshallah, of prophetic wisdom. That's all I have for you today. Assalamu alaikum.
السلام عليكم. لا تنسوا الاعجاب بالفيديو والاشتراك في القناة تشجيعا لنا لنستمر بنشر المزيد إن شاء الله.